Merry Christmas. If you're wondering why I'm saying Merry Christmas on January 7th, this is because the Greek Orthodox Christmas is January 7th. Well, at least on your calendar. Greek Orthodox calendar, it's actually December 25th, but January 7th on the normal calendar. So, I mean, on the regular calendar most people use. So, but I know this because my uncles are, and my tati, which means grandma in Arabic, are Greek Orthodox in their religion. And so we've always celebrated two Christmases, one at mom's side of the family and one at dad's. Great for the in-law problem. Dad's side. Because one on December 25th on the regular calendar and one on January 7th on the regular calendar. So it worked out great. Now I'm making this video about a reasonable schools and accommodations and how it has changed mostly at the college level. I don't know how much it's changed at the lower levels, but I can tell you my experience when I was growing up. Let's start with when I was growing up. I was put in RSP, which is Resource Specialist People, which basically had me in a cubby hole with a box of tasks and for a couple of hours for both the math and English. Didn't teach me how to be in a regular classroom. And then I was late for the regular classes because it actually was taken out of the time from the regular class on purpose. The teachers know this, so they didn't punish me, but it affected my ability to learn too. So, yeah. Accommodations in those days are the same as the accommodations you gave to the ESL students. I still didn't know how to learn, so how was I supposed to catch up, study for a test, be able to take the test, let alone understand the material? No. Didn't work out. And that's the elementary school. I didn't learn any of this until I was in high school and was in a private school and didn't have any other choice but to learn the regular way because they didn't have RSP. They didn't have any specialized classes for people with disabilities. So that worked out better. In college, the first 2 years, I had no accommodations whatsoever. I was tested for learning disability, but was denied it because according to the testers, my English and my math were not at college level, and it had to be one or the other for me to be learning disabled. College level. And and the huge part about the whole thing is that I was in RSP for both of them. I wasn't in the RSP for one of them. How was I ever supposed to catch up? I was retested by a private person, a tester at my parents' expense in 2 years later, and then the school was forced to retest me, and my math scores were higher at the higher math college level, so they called me learning disabled and gave me the accommodations I needed. And that was before my wrist started hurting and the injury, well, actually, I think my wrists were hurting, but I don't know for sure. We still don't know when the real problems actually started, but the diagnosis didn't start until 2002. And the years of college were started in 1996. Uh, Now, accommodation. In those days, accommodation for testing was double time for at the in the class. Sure. Test. Double the test time. No matter what the teacher gave you, you double that time. No excuse. No exception. Nowadays, it's 1.5 in that same college. It makes no sense. Now, you guys may say, oh, well, why do you need double time? Well, the double time is to equal what people with disabilities to people without disabilities are in the classroom settings. If you don't give the same amount of, if you subtract from that time, you're not equalizing it, you're making it worse, less. You're lowering it. And this is because it's cheaper. It's in fact this school that's sitting behind me, Cal State Bakersfield, that's doing this. They a bigger problem. They still do. That's probably started back then. They used to provide scribes, which are paid staff members who go to the class, take notes, or do whatever you need them to do in the class, do what you tell them to do, and give you whatever the product is results, and then and that's it. Nowadays, they replaced it with note takers. These are considered voluntary classmates. Oh yeah, and scribes have to have gotten at least a B in that class originally. Now, a note taker never took the class unless they're retaking it. For whatever reason, because this is the first time, just like you. Note taker taking their own notes, not instructed by you. So if you need somehow something written specific that you would normally do, it won't be written. But it wouldn't be written unless you take your own notes, which with learning disabilities, this kind of makes sense, but doesn't make sense with physical disabilities like hand disorders. Because with learning disabilities, you take notes and someone else takes notes as well, so you can make sure you didn't miss something. But with physical disabilities, you depend on that note taker to take the notes. Deaf people depend on that note taker to take notes, especially because you have to pay attention to the person translating. How are they going to take notes and listen and watch the translator, etc. These are problems that still happen, etc. These are big problems, and this school in particular refuses to provide it for me. And when my rest became a problem, the junior college does provide it, but not the 4 year. Uh, and they don't provide it at home, and that's a big problem for people with physical disabilities too. So, I mean, I think the junior college actually said they give you it would be your tutor, which you only get 2 hours a week with. That doesn't really, and that's not enough. It's definitely not for all your homework now. And that shouldn't be for your homework. That should be to help you understand what you're doing, not to do your work. So that doesn't really work. Now you may be thinking that I'm probably exaggerating, and this is stuff that I'm just experiencing, but actually, some of the worst things that actually happened. What I've actually seen and didn't happen to me. The junior college, not this college here. At one point during a budget crisis, which is the most common reason they do this when they redefine reasonable accommodations, actually started videotaping classes. Now, originally, I actually thought that this was a good thing, maybe because they were videotaping so that students with disabilities can watch the lectures again to see what they missed. But in fact, they were videotaping it for ASL translators. If you're not understanding what ASL translators, that is American Sign Language. That's not ESL. American Sign Language. That means for deaf students. That means they couldn't hear the lectures. To translate it 3 hours later, after the class is over, for the student to know what happened in class. 3 hours later. That does not make sense. Why? Because they didn't want to hire someone that will be there at the time of class. Guaranteed. They blamed funding, but the reality is there is no excuse. This is unreasonable. This unequals the playing field and makes people who are deaf not able to ask questions during class. Because how are they supposed to? Because they're not knowing what is going on the entire time the class is going on. It also created other problems for the staff members that were videotaping. Staff that were supposed to be doing other jobs were actually being used, were in the videotaping. The courtesy car driver literally was videotaping when I fell because I was waiting too long and couldn't wait for the car. Another example, a lot of times the time for the test taking, the person who watches us take tests basically wasn't there to even decide when we're taking them. Assuming, etc. So because of the same thing, she was videotaping, etc. This was a big problem, and when the complaint came down and said we need four new translators, and they had to know the language, they couldn't just be students learning it. The staff said, we can't even afford one. You can't even have zero. And the best solution is for you guys to team up and go to the same classes together at the same time. That's not the solution to these problems. The solution is the funding stops being, the funding stops being cut from the disabled. The accommodations stop being redefined. It's not. It's always going to be unreasonable if you redefine it. It never will be reasonable accommodations. It'll be done. It has to be both ways. It never is. uh, Things keep changing, but accommodations should not be changed to fit the economy. Accommodations should fit the person.